It's October the 1st, 2019, at the Tiananmen Square in Beijing. A grand military parade celebrating the 70th founding anniversary of the People's Republic of China is in progress, showcasing the country's post-reform armed forces. Imposing formations, formidable weapons, witnesses to the historic progress of the Chinese armed forces. A strong country must have a strong army. Only a strong army can guarantee national security. Building a powerful nation with a strong military has been and continues to be a consistent objective of the Communist Party of China. As the baton was handed over to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the task of building a strong people's armed forces received renewed emphasis. On December the 8th, 2012, Xi Jinping boards the guided missile destroyer Haikou, starting his first trip to the South China Sea since taking office as General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee and Chairman of the CPC Central Military Commission.
"中华民族伟大复兴 这是中华民族近代以来最伟大的梦想。这个伟大的梦想就是强国梦。对军队来讲呢，也是强军梦。"
3 months later, at the plenary meeting of the PLA delegation to the first session of the 12th National People's Congress, Xi Jinping solemnly announces the building of a people's army that is loyal to the CPC, able to win and persistent with its good traditions. The 19th CPC National Congress further clarified the party's goal of building a strong military in the new era is to build the people's forces into world-class forces that obey the party's command, can fight and win, and maintain excellent conduct. Taking into account the global strategic situation and the developments and changes in the national security environment, the CPC Central Committee with Xi Jinping at its core has assumed overall leadership and formulated a broad strategy for strengthening the armed forces in the new era. It has defined the centenary military goal, the new three-step strategy for the modernization of national defense and the armed forces, and strategic military guidelines for the new era, continuing to enhance the political loyalty of the armed forces, strengthening them through reform, science and technology, and the training of competent personnel, and managing the military in accordance with law. It has strengthened overall training to cultivate a new generation of revolutionary soldiers of noble soul, competence, courage, uprightness and virtue, and forge a highly competent military with ironclad beliefs, convictions and discipline, as well as an unbreakable sense of duty. Marching forward on the path to a strong military with Chinese characteristics, the People's Armed Forces are fully implementing Xi Jinping thought on strengthening the military, resolutely taking on the mantle of the new era entrusted by the CPC and Chinese people. Gutian, a small town in the mountainous area of western Fujian province that bears witness to the reform of the People's Army. In the late autumn of 2014, when the Chinese military was at a critical juncture, Xi Jinping led around 400 senior leading officers to Gutian and presided over a meeting on the political work of the whole army. Xi pointed out, on the occasion of the 85th anniversary of the Gutian Conference, we came here again to trace our roots, to contemplate where and why we started. During his garrison inspection, Xi Jinping repeatedly stressed that the absolute leadership of the party over the People's Armed Forces is the fundamental founding principle of the People's Armed Forces and the source of their strength. It is a principle that must never be altered or set aside. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, the political rectification of the armed forces has continued apace. Thanks to the liquidation of a number of corrupt military officials, the way is now clear for the development of a clean, upright and healthy political ecology within the military. At the 19th CPC National Congress, absolute party leadership over the People's Armed Forces was identified as a basic policy for upholding and developing socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era. As a result, the Central Military Committee, or CMC, Chairman Responsibility System was finalized and incorporated into the Constitution of the Communist Party of China. Xi Jinping made it clear at a CMC meeting on party building in August 2018 that CPC leadership and party building shall be strengthened in the new era to provide strong political support for new military development. Victory and persistence come from the soul and the roots. All PLA officers are required to absolutely follow the leadership of the Central Military Committee. Strictly observing the CMC Chairman Responsibility System, they should also have a strong sense of service, firm political stance, and be highly conscientious at work.
忠诚造就了人民军队对党的赤胆忠心，造就了人民军队和人民的鱼水情谊，造就了人民军队为党和人民冲锋陷阵的坚定意志。
On April 20th, 2016, when Xi Jinping appeared in his command hall in military uniform, international public opinion learned that Xi Jinping had acquired a new identity, Commander-in-Chief of the CMC Joint Command Headquarters.
"我命令全军指战员要坚决贯彻党中央和中央军委决策指示，发扬一不怕苦、二不怕死的战斗精神，刻苦训练、科学训练，勇于战胜困难，勇于超越对手。"
The order has been given to undertake a lofty mission. From plateaus to islands, from the hinterland to the depths of the ocean, from cyberspace to outer space, military training in real combat conditions in all seasons, all weathers and all regions has become the order of the day. The entire Chinese military is committed to honing its skill through field training and drilling in the new era. In November of 2020, Xi Jinping set even higher standards for the Chinese military to strengthen the relationship between combat and training, use battlefield requirements to guide and improve training, implement military strategic thinking, and establish a strategic military guideline for the new era, put up the battle-ready baton, and bear the responsibility of preparing for war. In the misty bay of Bohai, Yao Kai, Vice Chief of Staff of an aviation brigade of the PLA Air Force, takes off against the backdrop of the rising sun.
战备警报响起之后，我跟我的僚机进入到东海防空识别区，通过机载的一些设备判断出来，这是某国的歼击机。告警器上持续告警，我已经被对方的雷达所锁定，他如果发射导弹就会命中我。我后面是我们国家的领空，为了保护我们领空的完整，我们大速度前出，强硬的跟他对峙。
This is China Air Force on guard. You are now Operation Chinese Airmen. Take a reverse course immediately, or you will be intercepted.
The Chinese Air Force unit in which Yao is now serving, thanks to its spirit of dogged persistence and fearlessness, showed its ability to go toe-to-toe with better equipped air forces in the war to resist US aggression and aid Korea. Today, its successors are carrying on this spirit to meet new challenges.
没有一支强大的军队，就不可能有个强大的祖国。那么强大的军队呢，是这样一步一步走过来的。有了先进的飞机、防空武器，更要有压倒敌人、不惧一切强敌的这种英勇气概。这才是我们强军的魂。
都很棒，都很棒。
Soldiers are trained to safeguard their country's security. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, Faced with complex domestic and international situations and arduous military preparations, the PLA has comprehensively enhanced their war preparedness and combat capability. Its soldiers have resolutely safeguarded China's sovereignty, security and interests with firm determination, flexible strategies and effective military activities. A large number of heroic and exemplary groups and individuals have emerged.
我宣布，中国将裁减军队员额30万。
This is China's declaration of peace and the call to action to reform and build a strong military. Back in 2013, the third plenary session of the 18th CPC Central Committee made an overall plan to deepen reform in all respects and decided to include the reform of national defense and the armed forces in this overall plan.
我们必须以更大的智慧和勇气，深化国防和军队改革，这是实现中国梦、强军梦的时代要求。 是强军兴军的必由之路，也是决定军队未来的关键一招。
On November 24, 2015, the Central Military Commission Reform Work Conference was held at Jingqi Hotel. As head of the CMC leading group for deepening reform on national defense and the armed forces, Xi Jinping was to personally plan and direct the reform. With the leadership and command system reshaped, the size, structure and composition of military forces optimized, the reform of military policies and institutions has been advanced at a steady and fast pace, guided by scientific and rigorous policies. In just a few years, China has established a new command structure in which the CMC exercises overall leadership. The theatre commands carry out military operations and the services focus on developing capabilities. This has reshaped the overall organizational structure of the People's Armed Forces and marked an historic step in establishing a modern military force structure with Chinese characteristics. The People's Armed Forces have now a new system, a new structure, a new setup and a new look. Passing the test of reform, the Chinese armed forces have given a loyal answer to the call of the CPC and Chinese people. This unit is a mechanized infantry brigade of the 82nd Army Group. It was recognized and transferred from its garrison in the Central Plains during the reform.
一排排2排，注意，周军。
面对编制调整和移防，打起背包就出发。当时啊，很多同志给我讲，最后望一眼老营区啊，那一幕终生难忘。舍不得，确实舍不得。但是我们铁军旅的官兵坚决听从指挥，始终秉承铁心跟党走的政治信念，一声令下，立即出动。
The 1,000-mile redeployment was achieved resolutely. So was the military reform. Though the barracks and designations changed, the troops' loyalty and original aspiration have not. Dozens of troops set out as soon as they received the order. hundreds of generals shifted their posts the moment they received the order and reported for duty the same day. A large number of officers and soldiers gave a final salute to the army flag, in tears at being demobilized. Chinese soldiers always obey the CPC's directives. Yang Gun-se is the first special class combat hero of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. In October 2020, 70 years after Yang Gun-se's death, his former comrade in arms, Yang De-sheng, returned to the company they used to belong to experience new military equipment.
我心里非常激动，我看那个装甲车，想要掉眼泪。 我过去打仗，人家有这个武器，杨根世也不至于牺牲的。
What Yang De-sheng saw in the army was only part of China's modern armory. Today, the People's Armed Forces have made an historic leap forward in terms of weapons and equipment, blazing a path of development with Chinese characteristics. Modern weapons and equipment are only as good as the soldiers who use them. As the strategy of strengthening the army with talents went into action, military talents were enabled to study in colleges and universities, improving their skills through training as well as actual combat. The law-based construction of national defense and armed forces is now at an advanced stage. Remedies against the illegal and improper exercise of powers are now stronger than ever, and military personnel are made fully aware of the rule of law. The transformation of the People's Army is steadily progressing.
中共中央总书记、国家主席、中央军委主席习近平向人民军队发出为打赢疫情防控阻击战做贡献的冲锋号令。
On the Lunar New Year's Eve in 2020, the first PLA medical team of 450 set off to Wuhan. No efforts were spared to cure the patients. No delays were allowed to interrupt vital medical research. The first PLA medical team, the second, then the third. More than 4,000 medical personnel of the PLA acted upon order and shouldered the responsibility to undertake this essential task. With firm conviction, outstanding ability, tenacious style of work, and dedication to the CPC and the Chinese people, they delivered a successful result and added more luster to the Communist Party-led Chinese military.
你们都穿着防护服啊，戴着口罩啊，我看不到你们的真实面貌。 但是呢，你们在我心目中都是最可爱的人。
我非常感谢人民解放军，我永远不会忘记他们。
是你们又挽救了我第20生命，谢谢你们！
我爱你们。
我
going into harm's way and coming back again, all the time maintaining a low profile. The PLA remains ever heroic and ever reliable. The People's Armed Forces, feet on the soil of the motherland, carrying the hope of the nation, have risen from humble beginnings and are now marching to new heights, all under the leadership of the Communist Party of China.
从长夜到日出，走过千山万水的路，每一步都是信仰足迹，烙印下新中国版图，从贫弱到富强，走出复兴，为业征途，每一天都有奋斗牺牲，只为人民拥抱幸福，凭着心中坚定信念，敢叫日月换新天，雄关漫道，风雨无阻，汇聚起中华儿女同向前。从贫弱到富强，走出复兴，为业征途，每一天都有奋斗牺牲，只为人民拥抱幸福，凭着心中炽热信念，迈向